The term ones to watch, especially if you've played FIFA before, usually refers to a new signing, and it could also be used to refer to someone that is an academy product that you think is going to break through, to which does apply for one of the players I've picked for this. But for the other two, I've gone with people that you may not necessarily categorise as a ones to watch, but just two players that I think have really got a point to prove this season, and eyes are going to be heavily pointed on them for that point to be proven. So I've just used ones to watch basically as a catchy way to say that. So yeah, if you don't like it, then you can. Starting off with the first play then is Phil Foden. Now I've kind of already made a video on this. This just emphasises the point. We've already seen Maresca talk about how important the focus is on wingers and being more direct with the pre-season. That's the likes of Semenyo. We've seen cooking in pre-season at left wing. So that probably takes away, even though Foden's kind of played out there before, his chance to play there, because he can play there, but he's more of someone who comes in from the wings, so kind of like a right-sided 10 or a left-sided 10 if he plays off the left. So that kind of takes a role away there. Then you go and look at the 10. You got Ryan Cherky, who's also another one of those type of players who can play on the wing, but usually plays in the 10, who's cooked last season, and you can't just drop the bloke for the sake of it, can you? And that already makes questions about where does Phil Foden fit into it. Then it's emphasised even more by the fact that we're looking at more people. The likes of Enzo Fernandez has been linked to the club. He, in my opinion, is more of like an 8/10. So there's more people coming in that aren't already here who are probably going to be competing for Phil Foden's role. And with Enzo Fernandez, he's been linked at £120 million. So realistically, if he comes in, he's going to get priority, isn't he? Because they're not going to bench £120 million player. And with other new signings taking up other positions in that midfield for, again, high prices, the likes of Anderson, who's a bit deeper, but, you know, that's another role taken up. So it's not like Enzo Fernandez is going to be put further back to accommodate that. So questions arise to where Phil Foden fits in. If he's getting game time just here and there, or if he's starting week in, week out, he really has to prove himself, because I think all these options now really just show that if he does not put a stamp on this team, then he's steadily going to become a bench player, essentially, who probably will stay at the club, given, you know, obviously his roots and his links to the club since he was a kid. You know, he's one of our own, but he needs to really prove himself and put a proper stamp on this team, and he needs to do that by, when he's coming in, being the consistent Phil Foden. I'm not necessarily asking for the 23-24 Foden, because that was like a world-class season. He literally carried us that season, if we're being totally honest. But even if it's just like the 2020-21 Foden we've seen, or the first half of the season Foden we've seen in the season just gone, just he needs to be consistent. Otherwise, with all the options there now, it's not a case of like he's still one of the better ones out of the options. Those other options are going to come and take his place, and potentially already have. The second pick, I've gone with Donnarumma. Now, obviously, even in just pre-season, there's been a lot of hyper-focus on him. Obviously, there's that big thing with Donnarumma or Trafford. Which one should we keep? Which one should we let go? Obviously, there's a lot of Trafford fans. It's kind of divided the fan base. But even though Trafford is now officially left to Leeds, there is still a lot of Trafford fans picking at bits of Donnarumma, and already you've seen the kind of backlash he's getting, and the kind of, again, even though Trafford's left, the people who were Trafford fans kind of going, oh look, we're going to regret selling him, Trafford's well better, all this, all that. So there's a lot of focus on him, and I also bring into the fact that Enzo Maresca is coming in. Now, when Pep came in, Donnarumma wasn't a usual Pep signing. We've seen when Pep first came to the club, he banished Joe Hart to the side, even though I think he would admit he was a very good shot stopper. We didn't really know how good he was on his feet, but because of that, Pep put him to the side, got him Bravo, he was shit, got in Edison, he was exactly what he wanted. So then with all of that, when we're seeing Donnarumma come in, we're a bit like, well, he's not really known for his footwork, he's just a shot stopper. Was that not the same thing as with Joe Hart? So what's going on here? But he adapted to Donnarumma, which I think is a good thing. You know, you might say, oh, we shouldn't be changing our styles just to get this goalkeeper in, but ultimately, once the goalkeeper's at the club, if you start trying to make him play a way that he isn't suited to, especially if it's his passing ability, then yeah, you're going to get cooked. And this is one of the things I'm worried about, if I'm being honest, even as someone who sticks up for Donnarumma probably a bit more than others. I've seen Enzo Maresca at Chelsea and Robert Sanchez when he was there. Maybe Chelsea fans have a different opinion, but when Robert Sanchez was playing under Maresca, he made more errors than usual, and the main reason for that is, okay, don't get me wrong, it's nowhere near the level of shot stopper at Donnarumma, but his main attribute was shot stop, and he weren't really a passer out from the back, and that's how he was making a lot of errors, because even though he wasn't strong at that, Maresca was forcing him to do it instead of going, oh, you know what, he hasn't got great shot stopping ability, so we'll try and play more direct or something. And that's how you can get cooked. So if that sort of thing starts happening, then he needs to learn fast, otherwise he's fucked. Because I'll be honest, these Trafford fans are already saying regret. That sort of energy is going to push all the way over onto Donnarumma fans if he keeps making mistakes. For instance, the one he made against Arsenal where Havertz just essentially blocked him, kicking it out, and it went in. If that sort of thing keeps happening, which is likely to if Maresca forces him to play out from the back, a lot of the people like myself who are on the Donnarumma side are naturally just going to go over to the Trafford side, and once that happens, Donnarumma is going to be called to let out. So I think really he's only got this season to really prove himself. And the last one, which is probably a lot more linked into what people would actually refer to as a ones to watch player, is Ryan McAdoo. Now he's obviously got a lot of hype from people. I've only personally seen him in the couple of games in the FA Cup and then a bit in that first pre-season game before unfortunately got injured. But with the winger situation at the club, you've got Semenyo and Doku, who I think, especially with the way Semenyo's played in pre-season, the way Doku played last season, they've kind of cemented themselves as the starting wingers. Then you look at it, at the minute you've got Savinho, it looks like he's going to go, there's been talks of Neto potentially coming in. Kind of seems like if there is really a time to break through, it is now for Ryan McAdoo. Now I'm not saying that I want him to be the main backup to Semenyo or Doku, I'm not saying that at all, because I think that puts too much pressure on him. I mean, we've seen last season Doku got injured for a couple of games. In that scenario, that means McAdoo's coming in and he's going to have a lot of pressure just to perform straight away. I don't want that. I do want him there in the squad though, as kind of someone that comes in consistently in cup games. There's his chance to prove himself. Not to say that, if he plays well in the cup games, then instantly next season, or the season after this one coming up, he should be straight into the first team or anything like that, but he should be progressively going on. Phil Foden made his debut in the 17-18 season, but never really made his proper breakthrough into the first team until the 2020-21 season. So it was a whole 3 seasons he had of, slowly biding his way into the team, which started off with just, cup games mainly, then it was... Or maybe I think his actual debut was against Feyenoord in the Champions League, which is one of those games which I think we were already through and stuff, so we just kind of came on. A lot of sub-appearances in games where we'd already be winning 4 or 5-0 and stuff. Then he progressed into coming in for the odd Premier League game. Then that got further and he was more consistent in the first team and stuff, and then he properly came into the first team. So I think that's the way we need to go, as opposed to when it was with Nico O'Reilly, which... due to injury, he was just kind of forced in there. Performed very well, don't get me wrong, so I'm not saying it can't happen, but yeah, I think what we've seen from Nico O'Reilly is a lot less likely to happen. A lot. Do you know what I mean? So, because someone his age just getting thrown in straight to the first team when there's an injury is, usually a recipe for failure. The reason I wanted to see McAdoo stay in the squad and be given the chances, at least in the cup games, is because Neto coming in is obviously going to take priority ahead of him initially, but like I said, I'm not bothered by that because Neto will get priority for the actual league games, whereas McAdoo can still come in for the cup games, so he still gets his chance. But if Neto comes in, makes his stance, McAdoo gets sent out on loan because of that, then probably another winger's going to come in, as opposed to that, as we've seen so many times before. As soon as a player goes out on loan, that's pretty much you're never coming back, mate. So I do want to see him keeping in the squad so he at least gets the chance to prove himself, even if it is in the smaller games. But yeah, if we send him out on loan and keep bringing wingers in, that's probably that's probably him done, which I don't want to see. There is also an honourable mention in this for Mubama, who has played a couple of cup games for us before, actually, in the senior team. I remember seeing him, and I actually thought he played well in that game. I think it was against Salford a couple of seasons ago. He has just had a very good pre-season. I'm pretty sure he scored 2 goals. One thing I also like, yes, it is pre-season, and the other game was against Salford in the cup, so, you know, not like the maddest of opponents, but when I've watched them, people might argue you don't want this, but don't get me wrong, he's nowhere near the level of Haaland, but the way he plays as a striker is a lot more like a Haaland than, for instance, Marmoush is a lot more free-flowing, will come deeper, will drift out wide, whatever. Mubama is very much an out-and-out number 9. Now, like I said, he still needs to progress and stuff, which obviously gives Marmoush the priority still ahead of him. That could be something that you look at. You know, we've always kind of tended to go to a second number 9 who's kind of completely different to the way that we play under Haaland. Maybe that isn't the best way to go about things. Maybe you go with someone who plays similarly to Haaland and can give Haaland the rest, which will make Haaland fresher for games where we really need him. So yeah, but he looks like he's going out on loan to Southampton this season anyway, so that's why I haven't included him in this. But he could have been, some people have actually been saying maybe we're going to regret that, but I don't think we're going to massively regret it, because even though I said sell Marmoush, that was on the basis that we might bring someone in or something. We haven't at the minute, so I don't know what's going on there. It looks like Marmoush is probably going to be that main backup. But again, if Mubama does stay, I'd still keep Marmoush if we're not going to get anyone else, because kind of like with McKay, if Haaland gets injured, I don't want to have to be relying on Mubama week in, week out. No offence to him, but he's just too unproven to be able to say, yeah, let's just chuck him into a team that hopefully is trying to compete for everything. Do you know what I mean? Is there any players that you think that I haven't included that really need to prove their point, or any academy products that could potentially really start to make their breakthrough this season? Leave it in the comments. Proper pre-season has ended. We've still got one pre-season game. That's based on my opinion, with the Community Shield coming up this weekend. So what are your predictions for that? We're going to twat Arsenal, aren't we? Up the fucking City.